Since our equity launch in San Diego, participants from San Diego and Kern counties spent the following year working their way through a series of learning experiences. Institute 2 involved a 2-day focus on complex systems and learning about systems of oppression, followed by Institute 3, an intensive data-driven look at their school systems as participants shared their ideas for change. And finally,
all right, good morning, good morning. How's everybody today?
Our Convening 2 conference, where we answered the question, what's next, by following our continuous improvement process. It requires us to understand the problem and the system that produces it, and then focus collective efforts to determine the outcomes that matter to help identify those who will actually benefit. Next, we generate ideas for change. As we test and build evidence we've gathered, it's important to know exactly how we defined evidence and whether we considered diverse forms of data. In the coming years, we'll need to proactively communicate the work we've done as we sustain, spread, and scale our change ideas.
Even though this is the last time we are meeting this year, the journey of equity never ends.
This was an opportunity for participants to discuss the data they've collected during this year-long continuous improvement process with a focus on identifying an equity challenge, which included getting an understanding of the root causes, identifying a goal or aim statement, and then testing their change ideas. This quick exchange of information here at Convening 2 is what we called
speed networking, and you're going to do that with another team.
Here's how one team approached an equity challenge that led to their change idea, as well as their key findings.
Our enrollment's just over 1,800. 22% of our population is ELs, and 100% free and reduced lunch. Based on the data, we sadly saw that more than 90% of our ELs were not meeting or exceeding the ELA standards on the SBAC. So we took that on as our equity challenge, and so that's our big overarching challenge. And so the blue line represents where our English-only students are, and the yellow line indicates where our English learners are. So there's a huge achievement gap there. We're even below the county average, so decided to take that on. After we looked at all of our data, we said, okay, let's work on academic discourse. We'll use sentence frames. So we started with that, and then when we went in, we were finding that our EL students were not speaking or just sharing an opinion. Where we went next is we created a self-assessment sheet for students to rate themselves each class period on where they felt they were in their oral discourse.
We basically gave the students this chart, and for the last couple months, every time we did whether it was with your partner or a whole group or a whole class, afterwards I would say, okay, pull out your chart and I want you to rate yourself on where you feel like you were. So we have that in conjunction with observers coming in and listening to these conversations to kind of get that, like, hey, here's what the adults are seeing and here's where kids are rating themselves.
We saw that there was a big gap from what the adults were seeing and what students were feeling, the level that they were talking at. To connect it to the learning that we were doing here at the Institutes, we wanted students to identify patterns and trends from their own academic discourse.
Having identified the fact that most of their EML students are not scoring well, the change idea they developed, the use of sentence frames, will support students in engaging in more rigorous academic discourse with each other, and students will self-evaluate their level of oral discourse. Their key findings? As a result of teachers and staff testing this change idea, students increased their level of academic discourse, actively listened, and shared their opinions with evidence using academic language.
The teaching practices from America's Best Urban Schools, this is what we bring to our staff in staff meetings. We'll take one chapter or just a chunk and have them read it, and then we talk about it. and bring it to, well, what can we do in the classroom and how can we create equity with our students.
The book, Teaching Practices from America's Best Urban Schools, describes the methodology and best practices used by our partners, the National Center for Urban School Transformation, or NCUST, which designed an equity audit for schools. Co-author Dr. Joseph F. Johnson Jr. says his research began shortly after his early years as a school official in Texas. While many Latino and African American students were scoring poorly on tests in that state, Dr. Johnson made a startling discovery.
Whoa, there's a school here that serves predominantly children of color, and 50, 60, 70% of their students are doing well on this assessment. What's up with that? Somebody needs to go study these schools and find out what's going on.
NCUST did exactly that. They created a program that identified, studied, and celebrated elementary, middle, and high schools that were among the highest performing urban schools in the nation. One of the primary factors contributing to their success, a focus on teaching practices, as well as the level of commitment demonstrated by all personnel, factors that took center stage when our participants shared some of the findings of their school equity audits.
In order to move the needle with the educational gap of any of our students, we had to start with the trust of our own staff, because without that, there would be no buy-in from the students, no buy-in from administration and such. So that was really our starting point.
Another factor contributing to the success of all students, as well as achieving equity in their schools, best practices that are most relevant to the student population.
They want interaction from adults, so that academic discourse, they want to have those conversations with each other, because they're learning a lot from each other, but also with their teachers and staff. And they want to know that they're not being sold short. And our equity audit said, it was blatant on every page how low the expectations were, and our kids were saying that they don't want to be given low expectations and they don't want to be sold short, and they don't want the easy way out, even though that's the perception of a lot of staff, that they're just trying to take the easy way out or that they don't really care, but the kids, that's not what they want at all.
In many schools today, the way we teach is similar to the ways in which we taught the beeve. Leave it to Beaver.
Leave it to Beaver.
If I don't grapple with the fact that the way I teach may have worked really well for the beeve.
Theodore? When we go on a picnic, we eat hot dogs and hamburgers.
It's not going to feel relevant to my Black students, Latino students, my students from foster families. If we don't know what's really salient, what's really critical, then we're not going to get there. The beeve is gone.
What we've learned, or what we've seen them learn, is that they have a voice, and that's been evident in the classroom. Our teachers have talked about how they just see those collaborative conversations happening naturally now. They're asking, they're advocating for themselves. Hey, can we go sit outside, and we're just really working on this right now. We just need some time on our own, and then they'll come back and ask clarifying questions. But they're seeing that dynamic shift and change in their classroom.
Before any of these changes can take place, we may very well face a few communication barriers along the way.
We made a list of the possible potential communication barriers. Do you remember that? And this is what you said: trust around the audit report. And if I remember correctly, is that the audit report had not been shared with the school staff. And so there was all these trust issues around who wrote the report, what does it say, you haven't told us, is it really true, they were only here for 5 minutes in my classroom. Next one is transparency, which goes along with that. I don't know what you do, you go to this meeting, you come back, you don't actually share anything with us. I don't know what you're doing related to equity. Next one, need for clarity. So again, that equity definition, what is exactly is that we're doing, what are the requirements, what are we going to do? Stigma mindset regarding school. This is the worst school in our district. No change in bias or narratives, and that means no matter how much work we do on implicit bias, how many discussions we've had on equity, I don't see any change in the adults on campus. feeling lack of capacity to make change. So that was a little bit of resistance. Either I don't want to make the change, or I don't know if I can. Like, can we make the change, and what does change look like when we change our capacity? Humanity, looking inward, not outward, and I believe that meant, how do I contribute to this problem? And not just looking out the window like, well, you know, they come from this neighborhood, they're poor, they come not reading at grade level, so really kind of looking inward instead of outward. Rely on time, need to continue to build team capacity. This was an issue with time, with how many meetings you actually have at your school site, with all the other demands of all of the other initiatives that your district might be having, or just the things that you started at school. So how do we deal with that? And then the last bullet is need to build trust. Like, how might we build this trust? How might we build the team? How might we warm up our room to do this work?
We're walking away with more questions than we have answers, and we're really getting down the rabbit hole of what this work is. Because now we're going to get to the nitty-gritty of how to implement it school-wide and site-wide without overwhelming the rest of our staff. So just like walking with them instead of like leading. I mean, we're leading them, but we want to walk this with them. We don't want to make decisions for them. And so just having to navigate.
Are we on the right track? Are we doing the right thing? Have we asked the right questions of ourselves? Are we having the right conversations in our group? Are we really staying true to the group of students that we've identified? I think there's still a lot more work to do. Yes, we've had 9 days, but those 9 days also sometimes feel like 9 hours.
When you implement school-wide, you have to remember that, one, you're farther along in the journey because you've had time to process and think, and then how can you build in time for them to have some of those same experiences, because those 9 days are going to be like sucked into like 15 1-hour meetings, right, that they get. So just being conscientious of that I think is really important.
We are fully aware that change won't come easy or happen overnight, but we are fully engaged and committed to change.
We won't change if we assume that the status quo is as good as it will get. We're not going to quickly snap, pop, and change the culture of our school such that students truly feel welcome. These are things that require deliberate, consistent work.
You've done that work. Teachers are so powerful. You all can do it. It should not be the school site administrators alone. It has to be a collective, a guiding coalition. You are that coalition, and you have the skills and the ability to do it. We believe in you. We've seen it. You have people here to help you, Kern County Office of Ed folks and San Diego County Office of Ed folks. We're here for you.
They have an opportunity to make a powerful difference for every student.